Guys, welcome back to Strong Successful Male. So for today, we'll be covering an update or a Q&A to a very popular series I covered earlier this week, which is titled, Good Husband Goes Scorched Earth After Deceitful Wife Threatens to Take His Son in Divorce. And guys, as you all recall, that's about the guy who, definitely made mistakes in marrying the wrong girl with her wrong family, and even though she showed some signs and red flags early on that we all saw, she really showed him once they got married. And when the guy realized enough was enough, he handles things like a boss in the end by getting rid of her. And where she tried to take him to the cleaners, he took her to the cleaners and made it like a bandit. And this whole Q&A is a response to lots and lots of questions that you guys had in the comment section about the situation, the divorce, her, and all that. So since he took the time to write it out, and many of you guys are interested in the story, I'm going to cover this here. So I'm going to jump right into it. He says here, Hi SSM. Thank you for covering my story. I appreciate that you did not tear me up as badly as you could have due to my poor decisions that led to my marriage and divorce. Well, I guess you caught me on a good day where I got a good night's sleep and I wasn't in a smacking kind of mood, but you still got it. But yeah, you made mistakes, but ultimately we all make boneheaded mistakes. The thing is, you got to learn from them. You were right. At the time, I did want the family enough to willingly blind myself to what should have been obvious. I've appreciated reading both the positive and negative comments on these posts. I want to offer a follow-up to address some of these in case you wish to include an update. There were some questions regarding my choice of names for my ex-wife. I chose Mercy for 3 reasons. First, because by the end of our proceedings, she was begging for mercy. Second, because by the end of it, I was both merciless in how I dealt with her and merciless in my life. Well, you had to go to the mattresses, as they said in The Godfather. You had to show no mercy because she wasn't going to show it with you, dude. She was setting you up left and right. There are a lot of questions about the allowances I referenced to and indignation that a man be on an allowance. This allowance was my requirement because of budget issues, and being fair, I did the same for myself. I did this in order to hit the financial goals that I laid out to get her out of debt. I get what you mean, but it sounded like she was giving you an allowance, and ultimately you were the one that was great with money and she was horrific with money, but there should be a budget for both parties. But on occasion, as long as you're meeting your budget, you can treat yourself to whatever you enjoy. But I get what you meant there, because it really sounded like she was telling you you get $75 a month to buy whatever. No, she doesn't tell you what to do, considering she's terrible with fucking money. Another area of concern for a lot of viewers was when I intentionally drove into what I suspected may be a trap designed to make me look unreasonable and other things. A lot of people suggested that the best way to avoid a trap would have been to not go in the first place. Well, I was kind of thinking that too. They are right, that is the best way to avoid it. I wasn't trying to avoid the trap, I was trying to verify that I was there knowing I could make it unlikely to hurt me. In full transparency, I know that this was a risk, and I knew it at the time. He's referring to when he came back and found that she had divorce papers, and he wanted to go talk to her and went to the house where she was, and they were hiding behind the door like, ha ha ha, and called the cops on him. That's what he's referring to. I did want to try to save my marriage if possible, so that was part of my motivation. But I also wanted to find out immediately if she was going to try and be underhanded or deal in good faith. I took as much precaution as I could to think about to minimize any risk and walked in. This included removing any potential weapons, not texting her ahead of time to make her think I'd fallen for it, recording the interaction and acting as any perfectly calm and rational person knocking on the door of a house that he had been invited to. My goal was to either save the marriage or give her an opportunity to make false accusations that I could disprove if needed. It was a risk, but I decided it was worth it. Well, fortunately for you, it worked out. Also, because of the length of the story, I wasn't able to include all of the tactics I used and kept the story intact. Many had to be trimmed. Fat had to be trimmed from the story somewhat, so I condensed it as much as I could. My overall goal was to make any accusation against me seem as outlandish as possible, while continuing to encourage her to make these allegations that I could later disprove. Well, your story was very long, and you obviously realized, okay, I gotta cut things back. So obviously there's a lot more going on that you can mention, fair enough. For example, I am politically right-leaning compared to Mercy's father, and we had many discussions at length concerning his communist ideals. While I clearly disagree with him and could soundly dismantle his logical fallacies until he would walk off in a huff. I believe in the Second Amendment. I was raised around weaponry my whole life and had no problems with a gun not being locked up until a child was brought into the house. Remember, our guy was very big into weaponry. I literally got to watch what I say here in regards to that. GUN is what it is. It's YouTube and the world we're in. Not my choice, guys. And some of you are like, SSM, I got to play with the fucking rules to stay on this channel. I believe as a man is responsible for protecting both himself and his family from all threats. I have no problem using to defend myself. I have done so successfully in the past many times, and I've been ready and willing to take a life if needed, if it came down to it. But I take active steps to avoid the need for violence because the best way to win a fight is not to have one. I wholeheartedly agree, and you gotta be willing to protect yourself and your loved ones. Mercy's father knew my beliefs on these things. So essentially, the attacks I expected were that I was violent and that I was unsafe with weaponry. That I would die before allowing a government agency to take my weaponry. That I was a neglectful father, that I was able to dismember animals like a psycho, and that I was a right-wing nut who would fight and die for what I believe in. So that's the picture they try to paint of you, huh? I need to make my positions in these areas as reasonable sounding as possible and downplay my intelligence on the nuances of these issues. This includes scrubbing all social media platforms of any political posts to remove negative bias against me. I've been shaving my head in lieu of accepting my thinning hair in my 30s, so I began to grow my hair out and shave my beard to appear less physically intimidating and gained about 15 pounds of fat to look softer in the midsection with a plan to drop it later with keto. In other words, before the divorce started, buzzed, shaved head, he was in good shape, posts on the internet, all these things made him look to be more intimidating that they could use against him. So he grew his hair out, gained some weight, kind of like a little of a dad bod going, that type of thing to appear safer. Perception is everything. Perception is reality. It's interesting, man. I focus on demonstrating calmness in the face of overwhelming frustration. Demonstrating reasonable gun ownership and rational viewpoints on the use of violence, and a middle-of-the-road viewpoint on politics. Well, again, depending on who you're getting to vet you, that could be helpful. During my first sit down with the GAL, who was very anti-GUN, in a pro-gun state, the first thing I told her was that my son was the most important part of my life, and as she asked me to, I would in fact sell every GUN I owned, which was a lot, if that is what it took me to keep my child, although I do not agree that this should be needed. It was 100% true. There's nothing I wouldn't do for my child. Well, that's great, man. Any parent, father would do the same thing. I also knew she had no legal standing to require it, but the offer is what was important. It showed her that I was not the type of man they claimed I was, and the GAL specifically pointed this out later on. Well, that's good to hear. The GAL also tried to frustrate me intentionally in our meetings, questioning my views, edging on disrespect, and so forth. I saw this for what it was, a test to see if I would get angry easily. I was polite, stated my beliefs where needed, knowing that they are perfectly rational and respectful, and disagree with her when she would not relent, while telling her that is what our great country is about, and we need both sides of the political spectrum, and why her left-leaning view was important in the political process. Well, you played smart, and she was obviously trying to bait you by getting you worked up and angry and stuff like that. Remember, guys, you always got to be calm. She tried to bait me, what I just say, using specific instances of recent self-defense things that were divided along political lines. I separated from the party she expected and explained rationally why I believed that case was unjustified and that the one who did shooting had violated the law in taking a life. I clearly explained that all life is sacred, that I would hate to take a life, and that the only justification I can see for that would be to save a life. I explained why I no longer agree with the death penalty, and so forth. All of my views were communicated truthfully, but in such a light as to align as best as possible with our own political bias. You're playing the game. You're playing the long game. You got to do. I'm sure you were dying to say what you really thought, but you kept your son in mind. You wanted to win so you can have him. Because God, can you imagine the life would have happened if she got full custody of your boy? I also knew that she would be questioning every acquaintance we had. When a group of people tried to get their story straight, it is obvious to investigators because too many details are identical. I prepared the people she would interview by telling them what Merseyside was likely to insinuate about me, rather than telling them what I wanted to say. This means that every person crafted their own responses based on combating a negative view, rather than all confirming the same points or telling the exact same story. Each person did so in their own words, which were in alignment overall, but not identical. Mercy did the opposite, and the GAL saw right through her. Well, of course she did. She's going on full emotions, and not to mention the fact that she's a dipshit. You plan things out. You're methodical with your... That's how you have to be. You were at war. Not all my red herrings panned out, and some worked more than others. I drafted dozens over the year and used them sparingly. For example, I like to drink beer, and knew she may accuse me of being a drunk. Yeah, you like a beer on occasion, so therefore you're a drunk. So another red herring was dousing my shirt with alcohol before picking my son up in front of her, so that she would smell it on me and be tempted to call the police while I drove off with our child, knowing that I would have no scent of alcohol on me by the time I may be pulled over and could pass any breathalyzer or field sobriety test given. This would be infuriating but not illegal and would lead to otherwise reasonable person towards acting unreasonably. The time they claimed I pulled a weapon on them was similar. We were meeting to exchange our child in front of a police station. They were making demands about where we had to stand in view of one specific camera in order for them to perform the exchange with me. Rather than engage with them, I began to walk past them into the building, but stopped at the threshold exactly on the line past which weapons are not permitted and said nothing. I stood there holding my son, blankly staring ahead and ignoring them. When they questioned why I would not walk into the building, I simply stated that I wasn't able to. They took that to mean I was armed, which in all fairness is a reasonable assumption. It would have been legal for me to be armed if I had wanted, but I was not. I did not say the word weapon and did not make any threat of, I simply said I could not walk forward while standing next to a giant sign that said no weapons permitted. They took it from there by expanding what was odd behavior that indicated I had a weapon into I claiming that I physically pulled out a gun, pointed at them, and threatened to off them, while I had the entire interaction on video, which did not also include audio, my statement, or my lips moving. What I did have is a false claim that they made that is easily disproved by the evidence available. My rules were simple: follow the law, demonstrate calm rationality to all in public, make nudges towards the other party where I was able, in order to get them to take the bait, and be prepared with a reasonable explanation for my actions if and when they came to light. Man, you had quite a year during all this. I know a lot of people would be abhorred at how I manipulated the situation, and I would generally agree that it would be wrong to do to someone. This is the very definition of gaslighting. I believe the act in good faith with everyone is important and always strive to do so in my personal life. Yes, of course, but you were at war, and you knew what you were up against, and she was playing dirty to win, and take you to the cleaners and take your boy. I got no problem with this. I'm sure the majority of the brothers watching this would have no problem with this. However, lines had to be drawn, and when your opponent is not following the rules, you need to change the game. So I focused every ounce of creative intent toward winning at all costs. There you go. I ensured that every action I took did not break the law, and ultimately I did not force her to make these false claims against me. I just increased the likelihood that her biases would take the bait and run with it again, fuck around and find out. As for the DNA test, that's what a lot of people were talking about in the comment section. I did too. Like, given her behavior, how do you know? He says, I understand the viewpoint that you and most of your viewers have, and I mostly agree. I would DNA test any kid moving forward, but I would do so after the birth and behind the back of the mother. I understand that means some money out of pocket may be wasted supporting a child that was not yours, but again, keep your cards close to your vest is my thought. and I would rather pay the money not to have her see every way in which I verify her behind her back. As Alan Watts would say, check under the hood, but you mustn't let them see you do it. As for DNA testing my son, I have not and will not DNA test him until he is 18 years old. I gladly take any smacks you and your viewers want to hand out. I would actually fight in court not to have one if needed. This is my son, I've claimed him, and even if this was another man's baby, this is my child. There's no upside to me testing him now, because I would still raise him the same either way, but that knowledge may affect my treatment of him, and thus my relationship with him, which is not fair to either of us. If his mother was a WHORE, it's not his fault, and I choose to take the responsibility for this child, and I do so eyes wide open. Okay, man. You see him as your boy. I'm sure he looks like you. I'm sure that helps, but he's your boy. Certainly not his fault, regardless of what would be the truth or not the truth. So, okay. But the thing is, when he's 18 years old, if it turns out you did that and found out that he was not yours, and I hope he's yours, that would be important for like medical history and stuff down the road, you know. When you get to be in your late 40s, guys like me, you start thinking about that shit, you know, like what things, you know, go in families, my family, all that type of thing. I do plan to test him without his knowledge at 18 years old. However, laws are finally becoming more better by the day. If it turns out that he was not mine, my relationship with my son will still be established into adulthood, and then I will begin the legal battle over her false attestments and fraud with laws that are likely more friendly to my cause at that time. Okay. And hopefully it will be more friendly towards men at that time. This is my money, my time, my choice, and I feel this is worth it, so criticize away. Either way, I'm sure it is a moot point, since the kid is smart as a whip and a dead ringer for me. I just like to have plans for all eventualities. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, if he looks like you, for goodness sake, and at this point he's not a baby, he's a little boy, you know. Like, I always knew without question I'm my dad's son because I look just like him. It's amazing. I look back at my dad when he was in his 40s. It's like, holy shit. I look a dead ringer. And my sister looks like my dad. As for Mercy, oh boy, here we go. As for Mercy, I'm pretty sure I broke the woman. Well, could have happened to a nicer girl. She has dated one man that my son met since the divorce, and that ended years ago. About every year or so, she needs a good metaphorical slap to put her back into her place, and a reminder that pulling her BS does not work for her. But other than that, things are moving in the right direction, and I'm able to both be cordial and fair to her. My goal is for both of us to be able to be cordial and fair with each other, around each other for the sake of our child, while never allowing her into a position where she could cause me damage. And we are slowly getting there after all these years of being positive and negative reinforcement. And he says, yes, exactly what you would do for a dog, and influence her actions. Sincerely, morally merciless man. Well, bro, I'm glad you wrote in with some update. I mean, answers to the questions, because a lot of us had. I mean, it was a hell of a long story and adventure that I covered here, so naturally, a lot of guys had questions and comments, and so did I. And yeah, you have, I mean, obviously you're going to get along for the sake of your boy, because you're going to be dealing with her one way or another for the rest of your life. Even when he's a legal adult, and let's just say he gets married and has kids, then you'll be sharing a grandchild or grandchildren with her, and you're going to be seeing her. But by then, he's a legal adult, so you don't have to play nice if you don't want to. But you can't give an inch with her. Ever. Ever. You give an inch with her, I'm telling you, she's going to see that as weakness and try to exploit it. So you always have to be on your guard. That's my opinion. I'm sure a lot of guys will agree with me here. She knows you beat her. You know what I mean? Not physically. You won. And she made out like a bandit. And don't tell me, not for a second am I going to believe that she's not going to be looking for an opportunity to get even with you on that and blame you for everything. So you always keep your eye out for any BS she can pull or any BS her family can pull. But other than that, man, great story. I'm glad you won and you did what you had to do. Any father, a good father, would have done the same. I sure as hell would have if I was in your shoes. I would have married her, that's for sure. But given the situation, I handle it, yeah. And so I wish you all the best, man, and I hope you and your boy have a good life together and all that. And you can raise him and be a good man. I'm sure you will. Definitely when your boy's old enough. If I'm still on YouTube, have him see my channel. If I'm no longer on there, but the channel's up, Have them see the old videos or content like that. That's what all young boys need. But I think you'll definitely teach your boy many important things, but also what not to do. Make sure he learns the mistakes that you made, because that's key, you know? So, brother, great story here. And if anything happens down the road with a crazy mother or anything like that, let us know how you're doing. All right, guys, that's it for today. Be sure to comment down below. Let me know what you think about this. Give them a shout out. Let them know what you think. And be sure to like the video, share with your friends, and subscribe. I'll catch you next time.